Fire your entire team within 45 days, or I'll handle it myself, Austin Mills said, not even looking up from his tablet as he invaded my office at 9 a.m. sharp, just walked right in like he owned the place. His $3,000 suit probably cost more than some of my guys make in a month. I'm Nathan Brooks, 52 years old, and I've been running teams longer than this kid's been out of business school. Spent 12 years in the Army before moving to corporate, and the last 8 years building something special at Titan Defense Systems. I kept my voice steady. These 10 people have delivered every contract on time. The Morrison project alone saved us $1.2 million last quarter. Austin finally looked up, that smirk I was already learning to hate spreading across his face. Your little brotherhood costs $2.4 million annually. The math doesn't work anymore, Nathan. Simple economics? Simple economics. This from a guy who probably never held a real job before his MBA from whatever Ivy League school printed his diploma. They need proper notice. Federal contracts require 45 days minimum for security clearance transitions. 45 days. He laughed like I'd told a joke. I've been brought in by Pinnacle Holdings to streamline operations for maximum efficiency. Your team represents exactly the kind of legacy thinking we're eliminating. He stood up, straightening his tie. Handle this transition professionally, or I'll bring security to escort them out personally. Your choice, Brooks. After he left, I sat there staring at the stack of commendations on my desk. Letters from Defense Department officials. Thank you notes from the team after we pulled off the impossible on the Blackwater contract 18 months ago. These weren't just employees, they were brothers and sisters who'd learned to trust each other through multiple crises. My team wasn't your typical corporate group. When I built this unit 8 years ago, I hand-picked people others had written off as too old, too expensive, or too set in their ways. Eddie Fernandez, 47, former Navy mechanic who understood defense systems better than engineers with fancy degrees. His wife Maria had been battling cancer for 2 years, and their insurance was tied to his employment here. Sarah Kim, 44, single mom raising twin boys who'd been passed over for promotion for years but had an eye for detail that caught errors nobody else spotted. Her ex-husband had stopped paying child support 3 years ago. Mike O'Brien, 49, had been laid off from 3 different companies during the 2008 recession but could solve problems that stumped entire engineering departments. His daughter was starting her senior year at Syracuse, and he'd been saving for 4 years to pay for her last semester without student loans. Tom Hayes, 45, former Air Force communications specialist who'd lost his leg in Afghanistan but could navigate computer networks like he was born in cyberspace. His son had cerebral palsy and required specialized care that cost $4,000 monthly. These weren't just employees with salaries and benefits. These were people with families, mortgages, kids in college, medical bills, and dreams they'd worked decades to achieve. Most were over 45 in a job market that worshipped 25-year-old coders and buzzword-spouting MBAs. We'd claimed the basement conference room as our headquarters while other departments fought over corner offices. Down there, we rebuilt processes, caught problems before they became disasters, and saved the company millions. When defense spending cuts hit our sector 2 years ago and layoffs started hitting every department, we were the ones who figured out how to maintain performance with 30% less budget. That evening, I sent a simple message to our secure group chat. Parking lot behind building. 8 p.m. Family meeting. One by one, they showed up. 10 faces that had learned to trust my judgment through some pretty tough situations. Eddie brought thermos coffee for everyone because that's the kind of guy he is. Sarah had that focused look she gets when she knows something's wrong but is ready to handle whatever comes next. The new efficiency expert wants you all gone within 45 days, I said straight out. No point sugarcoating bad news. The silence lasted exactly 10 seconds before Mike spoke up. What about the Phoenix launch? We're 6 weeks out from final demonstration. Apparently our 18 months of work doesn't matter to the spreadsheet crowd, so that's it? This from Tony Ricci, our quality assurance specialist who'd caught a critical defect last year that would have cost us a $25 million contract. 8 years of proving ourselves over and over, and we're just garbage to be thrown out because some consultant needs to show quick cost savings? I looked at each of them. These people had mortgages that depended on steady paychecks, kids who needed health insurance, parents in nursing homes, retirement accounts that had finally started recovering from the last recession. Austin Mills doesn't know what he's dealing with, I said quietly. He sees line items on a budget report. He doesn't see the people who actually make this company work. So what do we do? Sarah asked, that steel in her voice that I'd heard during the worst crisis moments. We show him exactly who he's dealing with. But, as I said those words, I was already thinking about something else. Austin hadn't just walked into my office with an ultimatum. He'd walked in with confidence. The kind of confidence that comes from knowing the game is rigged in your favor. Over the next 3 days, I started paying attention to things I'd been too busy to notice before. Like how Austin spent his first week interviewing senior management but never once talked to anyone below director level. How he walked through our workspace twice but never stopped to ask what anyone was actually working on. How he'd already prepared presentation materials about departmental redundancies before completing his assessment. And the phone calls, quick conversations that stopped when anyone walked by. Meetings with people I didn't recognize who carried themselves like private equity types. Expensive suits, calculating eyes, the kind of body language that comes from making money by dismantling other people's life's work. Austin wasn't just cutting costs. He was building something specific. By Friday, I'd seen enough to know we were dealing with something bigger than standard cost cutting. Austin's pattern was becoming clear. He wasn't just eliminating departments. He was positioning himself to control what came next. That's when I asked Tom Hayes to run a quiet security audit on our network access logs. Tom's one of those guys who notices things others miss. Former Air Force communications specialist who'd learned to spot patterns during counterintelligence operations in Afghanistan. If someone was poking around where they didn't belong, Tom would find the digital footprints. What he discovered on Monday morning made my blood run cold. Someone's been accessing our project files after hours, Tom reported, pulling up logs on his secure laptop. Phoenix Defense Contract, Morrison Logistics System, even the classified Homeland Border Security Project. Access timestamps show Austin's credentials, but he's examining technical specifications way beyond any legitimate business review. I studied the screen. Could he be copying our proprietary methods? Worse than that, Nathan. Look at this. Tom highlighted a series of file modifications. He's been changing critical test parameters in the Phoenix system. Small alterations to security protocols, modifications to performance benchmarks. Nothing obvious enough to trigger automatic alerts, but significant enough to cause system failures during the client demonstration. The implications hit me like a punch to the gut. If Phoenix fails during the Defense Department demo, it gets blamed on our team's design work. Meanwhile, Austin's already positioned to recommend emergency contractors to fix the mess he created. I felt that familiar calm that settles over you right before a firefight. Can you restore the original parameters without leaving traces? Already done. But Nathan, there's more. I traced some of his after-hours communications. He's been in regular contact with Coastal Solutions Group for the past month. I'd never heard of them, but Tom's research painted a clear picture. Coastal was an offshore consulting firm specializing in emergency technology interventions. What made them interesting was their client list. Every company Austin had previously restructured ended up hiring Coastal within 6 months of his arrival, always at premium emergency rates. That weekend, I did what any good soldier does when facing an unknown enemy. I gathered intelligence. Saturday morning found me in the basement of the public library, using their computers to research Austin Mills and Pinnacle Holdings, the private equity firm backing his efficiency initiatives. 3 previous companies, identical pattern. Austin would identify redundant departments, eliminate experienced teams, then create operational crises that required expensive external solutions. Each time, Coastal Solutions Group appeared as the recommended vendor, charging 3 to 4 times normal consulting rates for work that suspiciously resembled what the eliminated internal teams had been doing. The beauty of the scam was its simplicity. Private equity firms loved the immediate cost reductions that boosted quarterly profits. By the time the hidden costs of the emergency contractors became apparent, Pinnacle had already sold their stake and moved on to the next target. Sunday night, I called an emergency meeting at my house. As my team gathered in my living room, these people who'd become family over 8 years of working together, I knew we were facing something that went far beyond job security. Austin Mills isn't just restructuring, I told them, spreading printouts across my coffee table. He's running a systematic fraud operation, and we're the first phase. Eddie picked up one of the financial reports. You're saying he's deliberately sabotaging our work to justify bringing in his buddies? That's exactly what I'm saying. Tom found evidence he's been modifying our Phoenix project files to guarantee system failures during the Defense Department demonstration. Sarah leaned forward. So when Phoenix crashes, it looks like our team screwed up a $25 million contract. And Austin rides to the rescue with Coastal Solutions Group at $1.8 million to fix the mess he created, Mike added, studying the pattern analysis. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications. We weren't just fighting for our jobs anymore. We were fighting to prevent a fraud that could compromise national security projects. What's our move? Tom asked quietly. Over the next hour, we developed a strategy that would have made my old Army intelligence unit proud. Phase 1. Document everything while appearing to comply with Austin's transition demands. Phase 2. Give Austin enough rope to hang himself by making his sabotage attempts so obvious that even corporate executives couldn't ignore them. Phase 3. Ensure the right people were watching when he made his fatal mistake. The following week, we executed our plan with military precision. Publicly, we began the transition procedures Austin demanded. Training replacement personnel, documenting processes, preparing handover materials. Anyone watching would see a professional team complying with corporate restructuring. Behind the scenes, Tom implemented sophisticated monitoring on all our critical files. Every access, every modification, every attempted change was being recorded with military-grade precision. We were building an ironclad case that would stand up to federal scrutiny. Meanwhile, I made a phone call to someone I hadn't spoken to in 3 years, Colonel James Wright, retired, now working as a Defense Department contract oversight specialist. If Austin was compromising classified projects, Jim needed to know. Nathan Brooks, his voice boomed through the secure line, heard you were doing solid work in the private sector. Jim, I need to brief you on a potential security breach involving defense contracts. How soon can we meet? After I explained the situation, including Austin's unauthorized access to classified files and systematic sabotage attempts, Jim was quiet for a long moment. You're talking about active Level 2 classified projects? Phoenix system has Level 2 classification. If Austin's modifications had gone live during the Defense Department demonstration, that's not just corporate fraud, Nathan. That's a potential national security violation. I'll need to coordinate with the DoD Inspector General's office. How solid is your evidence? Digital forensics that would hold up in federal court. Give me 2 weeks to set up a proper investigation channel. Meanwhile, keep documenting everything, but don't tip your hand. If this is as big as you're describing, we need to catch them in the act. 2 weeks later, Austin walked straight into our trap. Friday morning, he called me into what used to be our main conference room. He'd claimed it as his temporary office, papers spread across the table like battle plans. Financial projections, org charts with red X marks, and contractor proposals stacked in neat piles. Nathan, we need to discuss an urgent situation with the Phoenix project, he said, gesturing to a chair across from him. His confidence was unshakable, the kind that comes from believing your plan is foolproof. I sat down, keeping my expression neutral. What kind of situation? My technical review has identified critical vulnerabilities in the Phoenix security architecture. System failures that could compromise the entire Defense Department demonstration next week. The irony was perfect. He was describing problems he'd created himself, trying to position himself as the hero who discovered them. What sort of vulnerabilities? I asked, knowing Tom was recording every word through the conference room's updated security system. Austin leaned forward, pulling up files on his laptop. Authentication protocol failures, encryption key management issues, network penetration points that could allow hostile access. Frankly, I'm surprised your team missed such fundamental security gaps. Each vulnerability he described was actually a direct result of his unauthorized modifications to our original code. The authentication failures came from his altered password requirements. The encryption issues stemmed from his changes to our key rotation schedules. The network vulnerabilities were backdoors he'd inserted himself. This is serious, I said, maintaining concerned professionalism while internally celebrating his performance. Can our internal team address these issues? Unfortunately, no. The complexity requires specialized expertise we don't have in-house. I've researched emergency response contractors, and I have 3 qualified firms who could handle immediate remediation. He slid 3 proposals across the table. Coastal Solutions Group sat on top, their quote prominently displayed, $1.8 million for comprehensive security remediation and deployment support. Coastal offers the most robust solution, Austin continued. Full penetration testing, security architecture redesign, and guaranteed deployment support. Their team has handled similar emergencies for other defense contractors. I studied the proposal like I was genuinely considering it. The timeline's aggressive. Phoenix demonstration is scheduled for next Thursday, which is exactly why we need to act immediately. One more day of delay could mean losing the entire $25 million contract renewal. Perfect. He'd just established motive, timeline, and financial impact on record. What's the approval process for emergency expenditures at this level? I asked. I'll present the situation to the board on Monday. Given the security implications and Defense Department involvement, I expect immediate authorization. As I left his office, my phone buzzed with a message from Tom. Audio quality excellent. Digital forensics package ready for federal review. That afternoon, Colonel Wright called with an update that changed everything. Nathan, DoD Inspector General, is treating this as a priority investigation. We've coordinated with FBI Cybersecurity Division. They want to observe Austin's next moves directly. How directly? Federal agents will be on site Monday for the board meeting. Not as obvious observers. They'll be introduced as new Defense Department liaison officers reviewing contractor security protocols. The trap was closing, but we needed Austin to spring it completely. Monday morning arrived with unexpected energy in the building. Word had leaked that important Defense Department representatives would be attending the quarterly board meeting. What people didn't know was that 2 of those representatives carried FBI credentials and had spent the weekend reviewing our evidence package. At 9 a.m. sharp, the boardroom filled with faces I recognized, and several I didn't. Hugo Price, our CEO, sat at the head of the table looking more serious than usual. Board members filed in with expressions that suggested they knew something significant was happening. The 2 federal agents entered with Defense Department credentials that would pass casual inspection. Agent Martinez introduced himself as the new regional liaison for contractor oversight. Agent Thompson was presented as a cybersecurity compliance specialist. Both carried themselves like career military, which they were, before joining federal law enforcement. Before we begin our quarterly review, Hugo announced, we need to address urgent security concerns regarding the Phoenix project. Austin, you've been investigating this situation. Austin stood up, projecting absolute confidence. For the next 10 minutes, he delivered a masterful presentation about the critical vulnerabilities he'd discovered in our Phoenix system. His slides showed detailed technical analysis of security gaps, timeline projections for potential failure, and financial impact assessments. These aren't minor bugs, he explained to the room. These are architectural failures that threaten the entire platform. Without immediate intervention by qualified specialists, the Defense Department demonstration will likely result in system compromise and contract termination. Agent Martinez leaned forward with interest. Mr. Mills, how did you identify these specific vulnerabilities? Comprehensive code review and penetration testing over the past 3 weeks. I have extensive technical background in system security analysis. That was his first major lie, and both agents caught it. Austin's background was MBA finance, not cybersecurity. Impressive technical depth, Agent Thompson noted. Could you walk us through your testing methodology? Austin hesitated for exactly 2 seconds, long enough for everyone to notice. Standard industry protocols, network scanning, code analysis, authentication testing. His second lie, since our monitoring showed he'd never run legitimate security tests. The critical issue, Austin continued, is timeline. We need emergency contractor support immediately. I've identified 3 qualified firms, with Coastal Solutions Group offering the most comprehensive remediation package. He distributed copies of the Coastal proposal to everyone present. $1.8 million seems substantial for emergency support, Hugo observed. Quality costs, Austin replied smoothly. The alternative is losing a $25 million defense contract and potentially facing security breach investigations. Agent Martinez studied the proposal carefully. Mr. Mills, how familiar are you with Coastal Solutions Group's previous work? They have excellent references from similar projects, including projects at your previous employers? The room went dead silent. Austin's confident expression flickered for the first time. "I may have worked with various contractors across multiple positions," he said carefully. "Indeed you have," Agent Thompson said, opening a folder. "Coastal Solutions Group has received contracts totaling $8.3 million from companies where you've managed restructuring efforts." Interesting pattern. Austin's face went pale as the implications hit him. "Mr. Mills," Agent Martinez continued, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd spent years interrogating suspects, "we'd like you to explain how you conducted penetration testing on classified Defense Department systems without proper security clearance authorization." Austin's confident facade completely cracked. The testing was limited to publicly accessible code repositories. "Actually," I said, standing up for the first time during the meeting, "I think it's time we clarified exactly what Mr. Mills has been doing for the past month." Hugo nodded. "Nathan, please proceed." I connected my laptop to the conference room projector. The screen displayed a timeline of Austin's unauthorized access to our systems, each entry documented with military precision. For the past 4 weeks, we've been monitoring all access to the Phoenix Project files. What we discovered was systematic sabotage designed to create the exact vulnerabilities Mr. Mills just described to this board. The presentation continued methodically. Screenshots of original code versus Austin's modifications. Authentication protocols that worked perfectly until he altered the parameters. Encryption systems that functioned flawlessly before his unauthorized changes. Every security vulnerability he identified was created by his own modifications to our original design, I explained. The authentication failures result from password requirements he inserted. The encryption issues stem from key rotation schedules he altered. The network vulnerabilities are backdoors, he added himself. Board members leaned forward, studying the evidence with growing alarm. Agent Thompson spoke up. "Mr. Brooks, how long has your team been documenting this activity? Since we discovered the unauthorized access 3 weeks ago, we've recorded every file modification, every system login, every attempt to compromise our classified projects." I advanced to the next slide, showing Austin's communication logs with Coastal Solutions Group. We also traced Mr. Mills's coordination with Coastal Solutions Group. Phone records show 47 calls over the past month, including several conversations where he discussed creating necessary complications to justify emergency contractor intervention. The room erupted in murmurs as board members realized the scope of what they were witnessing. "This is fabricated," Austin said desperately. "They're trying to frame me because they can't accept being eliminated for efficiency reasons." Agent Martinez opened his folder and removed a document marked with federal seals. "Mr. Mills, you're currently under investigation by the Department of Defense Inspector General for violations of the Defense Contract Security Manual. Your previous security clearance was revoked in 2019 for undisclosed financial relationships with foreign entities." The silence in the room was deafening. "Additionally," Agent Thompson continued, "our investigation has identified similar patterns at 4 other defense contractors where you managed restructuring operations. We estimate the total fraudulent contracts exceed $12 million over 3 years." Hugo stood up slowly. "Security will escort you from the building, Austin. Our legal department will cooperate fully with the federal investigation." As Austin was led away, still protesting his innocence, Agent Martinez turned to address the room. The Phoenix Project was never actually compromised. Mr. Brooks's team implemented security protocols that isolated the original code from any unauthorized modifications. The system remains fully operational and secure. 3 weeks later, the Phoenix system demonstration went off without a single glitch. My team watched from the boardroom as 18 months of our work performed exactly as designed. 0 failures, 0 security breaches, 0 complications. The Defense Department observers were so impressed they authorized a $47 million contract extension on the spot. Austin Mills made national news, but not the way he'd planned. Former defense contractor executive charged in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme ran across every major network, while my team celebrated in our new headquarters, a proper department with windows, updated equipment, and recognition as the Strategic Security Division. Federal prosecutors allege a 3-year conspiracy to defraud defense contractors through systematic sabotage and fraudulent emergency contracts, the CNN anchor reported. The scheme allegedly compromised multiple classified projects and funneled over $12 million to offshore entities with suspected foreign intelligence connections. Eddie raised his coffee mug. to watching arrogant kids learn expensive lessons, Sarah added, to proving that experience beats spreadsheets every time. But the victory went deeper than just Austin's downfall. The federal investigation had exposed an entire network of corrupt consultants targeting defense contractors. Pinnacle Holdings was under federal scrutiny for their role in the conspiracy. 3 other companies were conducting internal investigations. The whole scheme had unraveled because one team of veterans refused to go quietly. Hugo stopped by our new office that afternoon with news that made the victory complete. "The board approved your promotion to Executive Vice President of Strategic Security," he said, handing me official documentation. "Also approved expanding your team to 15 people and establishing formal oversight authority for all classified contract security." I looked around at my team. These people who'd been written off as too old, too expensive, too set in their ways. Now the Defense Department was using our security model as the template for contractor oversight across the entire industry. "There's one more thing," Hugo continued. "DoD wants to establish a new classification of preferred contractor status for companies with veteran-led internal security teams. Apparently, having people who understand both military discipline and corporate operations is becoming a national security priority." 6 months later, I was cleaning out my old desk when I found Austin's business card from our first meeting. On the back, he'd written his personal motto, "Efficiency through elimination." I thought about that phrase as I watched my expanded team working in their new facility. Austin had been efficient, all right. Efficiently corrupt, efficiently arrogant, efficiently wrong about who he was dealing with. Real efficiency isn't about cutting people, it's about putting the right people in the right positions and trusting them to do what they do best. Austin saw 10 older workers drawing salaries. We saw 10 specialists with 200 years of combined experience who'd learned to trust each other through multiple crises. He saw expense reports. We saw brotherhood. The best revenge isn't always dramatic confrontation. Sometimes it's simply ensuring that competence wins over corruption, that experience trumps arrogance, and that people who've earned their place through years of service get to keep it. Austin Mills got 12 years in federal prison for conspiracy, fraud, and violations of the Espionage Act. His offshore partners weren't as lucky. Several faced espionage charges with no plea bargains available. My name is Nathan Brooks, Executive Vice President of Strategic Security at Titan Defense Systems. And I sleep very well knowing that some sharks learned the hard way that veterans don't just fade away quietly. If you've ever worked with someone who underestimated your value because of your age or experience, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes the best response isn't leaving quietly. It's showing them exactly who they're dealing with when they least expect it.